Whether or not it was 500 messages or 10,000 messages, just still the gigantic variability of how people respond to the messages that are sent out. So basically, we're building the bus and adding more buses to the left and right of it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Code Cognition podcast. Today I have 3 software engineers sitting with me who have been day in and day out working on agentic systems, both on LLM workloads and workflows, as well as agents themselves. So team, in terms of creating this deterministic system, in terms of creating this workflow, would you use the terminology of saying that you're training the LLM or you're training the system, or is there a better word for this? And how did you go about doing it, if you can tell us?
The best way to describe it is not necessarily training the system. It's more like how we evolved the system. Because when we started the system, there was no training data. We didn't have any. There wasn't live, so we didn't have like millions of conversations to do any training with. They had examples. That's different, right? So what we did was built a system that from the get-go was able to evolve. That, in other words, from the beginning, we built a system where we could capture telemetry from the system as from being live, from being interacted by with users. I can talk about it in a second. We also built it to be kind of easy to test, right, and measure how well it performs, and to be easy to capture test cases from the wild safely, right? So that and that expresses itself in, we had basically reporting from the very beginning of how the bot performed in terms of what percentage of messages, for example, were acceptable for the users to send off to the patients. In other words, the system started initially as sending no messages automatically, and then over time, as the users trusted the bot, the number of automatically sent messages increased over time. I can show you a picture of that. Back in February, we had actually back in January, it was like 0% messages, right? Percent. But over time, you can see here, 33% of the messages generated by the bot were accepted by the users, right? And sent automatically, all the way up to 86% by the end of March, and it is even higher than that now. On a daily basis, we can see, like, for example, how many messages were sent by the system. This is early on. And how many were sent by the bot, right? Sorry, by users, by bots. So from the get-go, we have captured telemetry, like how the users were interacting with it. In fact, there is an automatic feedback system, right, that I will have Daniel describe, so that we can, understand what types of messages were being accepted. So maybe Daniel, you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we've implemented this feedback system that has really helped us kind of like figure out what have we prompted wrong or what did the bot do wrong. Overall, I feel like I think we have 2 main categories. It's either the bot didn't respect a business rule or the bot got the tone wrong. And so when our client is able to, like, when they have to actually manually send a message, they'll send it and they'll say, hey, I'm changing this one, and the reason for that was it was a business rule, or like the bot said something that was just kind of, it sounded like a bot, or it just was just like a kind of weird tone. That has really helped us, though, as I was mentioning, like kind of inform what our next work is and look for systemic issues. Oh, we know in this specific section of the feedback, it's always getting the business rule wrong. We open a ticket, we fix the problem. It's been, I don't know, really helpful for, like figuring out work. And also it's been helpful for the client to not have to constantly just be telling us for every single message, hey, I just sent another one, this was this reason. It makes it easier on the client. It also makes it easier on us to just kind of like digest what the bot's doing incorrectly and where we need to solve it.
Yeah, basically on a weekly basis, we could query the system exactly what types of messages were being composed by the bot that were wrong and how are they wrong. It's automatically gathered. And then it's this feedback loop that happens. And then every time we find that there's a problem with some message type, we would be able to capture the test case from production, sanitize it, and then put it into our corpus of test cases. So maybe you can talk about that, Daniel, like the test runner.
Yeah, so we ended up having to build our own test runner because I think at the start, like I remember there was one time we were testing before we had built any sort of testing system, testing something with like a specific flow. You had to remember three different conversations, and so like, okay, I send this one, bot replies, I send another one, and like three conversations, four messages each. It's very very difficult to keep that in track. So we built this testing system where we can kind of just like categorize an issue, and then we can have the test bot or the test agent play it back. We know what the conversation should look like and what we expect, and as long as the bot does respond the entire way through, we have all the messages analyzed. If it responds through correctly the entire way, we can score 100% or 95%. I don't know, it's been very very helpful because I can make a change somewhere in the application and I can run the test suite after that, and I can see, oh hey, everything's still passing. Whereas before, or if you don't have this kind of thing, like you're kind of shooting in the dark hoping that, oh, this sentence doesn't have anything to do with teeth cleaning, but I changed it and then now something broke in teeth cleaning. So that's also been like really really helpful, just trying to just, I don't know, it helps us feel much more safe moving prompt changes forward.
I want to show one more kind of report here that was kind of helpful. Like I said, Daniel mentioned, like teeth cleaning, like the bot is able to recognize what is the classification of the message, right? So here's an example report we have where we can see that that these types of messages, like appointment confirmation reminders and appointment acknowledgements, the bot created messages that were 100% of the time for this particular day accepted by users. But it looks like whenever the messages were related to missing health form information, the users were changing it most of the time. So it's like a 30% accuracy. So that would inform our next iteration, right? To clean up. We know that there's some weakness in the prompting in this area, but not these areas. And we could also use this to see if we change something bad, if we see decreases in numbers across time. That was also very helpful.
Let me just clarify a couple things because I think we just discussed like a tremendous amount of value, and I want to make sure I just am fully tracking everything. So this workflow system that you had built, previously before there was an AI workflow system, wasn't handling any automated messages. But over the last several months, it's gone from handling, what was it, starting at like 33%, 35% in February into about
Zero,
I think it's
zero.
zero.
zero, and
Zero
basically
in
they were
January, yeah.
basically users are manually sending messages. Then we introduced a bot, which then went from 15% in January to like 80, 85% in
Yes.
March.
So 85% automation. And
Yes.
one of the key linchpins to that, or maybe the key linchpin, is this testing suite that you built. I'm interested to know if there is something else that you think besides the testing suite is like also the reason why it's been so successful.
I have one.
But okay. Oh wow, amazing.
So there's a decision to split out all the different types of messages and categorize them and give them names. So as you saw in that visual list, there's appointment confirmation or all of those different types. So once all of the different types of messages were named and separately categorized, then we could like turn on automation per type of message. And so once a given type of message got to 100% reliability, we could just flip the switch just for that type of message to be automatic. And so that allowed us to kind of divide and conquer the different types of messages.
Incredible.
That was key.
So I don't know if we talked about this, but in this workflow engine, there's kind of like stages of messages. That might also be along with the categorizing of the types of messages sent out, but there's like different stages of like, what you're going to do at this point in the conversation. And so splitting it out that way also helps to, divide and conquer. So this stage is where it's pretty clear and straightforward. And this stage is much more ambiguous and vague. And so that naturally is harder to automate. Or maybe it will always require a human in the loop.
Yeah, it was we automated, for example, the easy things to harder things. The messages that get automatically sent out at timed intervals, we did those first, right? And that took care of like, I don't know, 20% of messages, 30% of messages. Then we started dealing with responses that were not exceptional cases that added another 20 or 30%. And then finally, we're now working through, well, they had some complicated problem, right? We had to like go in there and something there's, and as Scott said, there are certain messages that will always require a human in the loop.
Yeah.
And now we're at the crunchy last 12-15% of all messages.
Yeah, like the rare edge case things. There's like it doesn't happen every day. This happens every once in a while or once.
Understood. Still, I think this is particularly a feat because this isn't just like some internal facing tool. Ultimately, it is a customer facing tool. And customers at the end of the day, they're not necessarily really precious about the fact that you have an LLM powered system. They want their result. They need their teeth cleaned. And so the fact that this system, that this workflow is getting to be 85% approved automated messaging is like incredible because it's not just the business who's being satisfied by the fact they're using AI or using an LLM. It's the customers at the end of the day that are getting their needs met. So this is pretty unique, I would say, and from what I've seen. One more question on this that's top of mind for me is that is there anything you found that broke in this system, or is the scaling of automation, is the scaling at the level of messages you're automating, or the thought put of automated messages, was that breaking any part of this system, or is it mainly these categories of messages, of these edge cases, as kind of the largest monkey wrench, so to speak?
It's both. The volume of messages increased. Here's the fun part because we when we deployed this, the volume of messages per day, uh, I think 2 or 3x, and they're continuing to do that, like increase by 10% every month. In other words, the volume of messages, the efficiency of us processing them, is has been a challenge. The scaling of it, plus, of course, whether or not it was 500 messages or 10,000 messages, just still the gigantic variability of how people respond to the messages that are sent out. I mean, the message is like, how was your dental visit? Just think about how many ways you could possibly answer that, right? And especially if you're, and the varieties of people that you're talking to, their ages, their situations, what they did there, right? How they felt at that moment when you're responding. So it's not, so the scale is not just the volume, but it's also the range of possibilities. So I hope that answers your question.
No, no, completely. I think it just shows the level of complexity that you're really engineering the system for, because it's not just messages go up, it's demographics, psychographics, tone, tonality. There's plenty of funny examples, we could all think of. Like, how was your visit? Oh, it was lit. And it's like, oh no, there was a fire. We should call the fire department. No, no, no. I gave too much control over my LLM system. And now the fire department is at my dental clinic. We don't want something like that. But it makes me think that in a way, almost the graph is like a little too humble to the point of like 85% messages automated, because the total number of messages are also going up each month. Is that also the case?
I remind.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, essentially, when a project came to us, the system was just outside of the prototype phase, right? Then they went live with it. And so while evolving the workflow engine and the bot, they were also evolving the infrastructure of the application, making it scale, right? Not fall over as we iterated. So basically, we were building the bus and adding more buses to the left and right of it as it's going.
To the
And
fleet.
yeah, so essentially, I think if we're going to say like the important takeaway here is that when we started the project at the beginning of the year, right, and just before that, we had to plan how the system was going to evolve, right? How we're going to know what the bot is going to do, how we can involve the users, how we're going to update the infrastructure while knowing that there will be an increase of volume. And so all those bets thankfully have panned out, which is great. Great for the end users, great for the administrators.
Thanks for listening to Code and Cognition. If this episode sparked a new idea, challenged any assumptions, or helped you think differently about the combination of software and AI, we'd love for you to subscribe and share the episode. Until next time, keep building.